The speaker is an alien veteran of a war with humanity talking to an alien military history class. Now, as I see you all staring at me, because you need to. Well, let's face it, military history classes can get very dull. Very fast. As such, I am going to speak less as a professor and more as a veteran. As you all know, I was in our conflict with the humans. As everyone here knows, we lost after over 57 years of fighting. Whole worlds pounded to dust and melted. Only to cool and be pounded to dust again. We fought such a savage war that we realized how truly animalistic we can be. And how vicious humans are at their very core. But I have a unique perspective. Because a human saved my life. He removed both my legs. But he saved me. I'll tell you how later. First, I need to fulfill my promise. That I would come and lecture you about human conflicts and our run-in with them. Humans fail miserably at fighting wars. They always have, and they always will. To be fair, they have never fought a war in the entirety of their existence. They have had conflicts among their nation states. But noting that meets the galactic definition of war. Being a conflict where individuals are motivated to fight based only on the defense of their homeland. Humans are motivated to enter conflict for that reason. But they are inherently selfish. So they could never fight a war that way. To accomplish their task and end the conflict, they instead force themselves into situations where the only two options are fight for your life and the lives of your brothers in arms, or die in a hole. Humans put their backs up against a wall to fight their conflicts. Because that is the only way they will ever end. This very nature of human conflict is what caused us to start the war in such an awkward position. You see, when we started our war with the humans, they were really unhappy about it. Because we followed all the rules, spoken and unspoken, about starting a violent conflict. As you all know, the humans and us laid claim to a planet. It was unusually rich as heavy metals and was just what our two races needed to continue developing our heavy industry in the sector. After a few brief skirmishes, the humans settled on the northern land mass and we on the south. A treaty was signed and all was well for about 2 years. After that, a few of our politicians got greedy. They ordered outposts be set up on the northern half of the planet. We seized a few islands and put a base a few kilometers inland on the mainland. The humans demanded that we retreat, and we did not. The humans shot at us, hoping to scare us off. We refused to leave. And the humans shocked the galaxy. Throwing aside all laws regarding proportional force, they wiped out our base on the mainland and the islands, and then struck back at the southern continent. They landed 10,000 men on the southern land mass and began killing everyone. We were so overwhelmed that no effective defense could be mounted. The planet was blockaded, and every inch was mined by the humans. We sent some warships to reclaim our stake on the planet. But when they arrived, there were no human capital ships in sight. It is important to remember that at this point in time our technology was vastly superior to humans where capital ships were concerned. Now, as the ships, 5 of them, approached the planet, they were engaged by a fleet of smaller craft. The exact number is still unknown. But it numbered well over 7,500 craft. Taken off guard, these ships rapidly docked and boarded our ships. After several hours of vicious fighting, blood pooled in corridors and landing bays, sometimes as deep as a foot. The humans won, and they took those ships. All 5 of them jumped to Sol the second the fighting stopped. After that, our two races lashed out at one another. At the war's peak, over 1,000 planets were contested. How could the humans have mustered the forces to fight us on 1,000 fronts? They couldn't. Most of us never fought a uniformed human. But that didn't stop their civilians from taking up arms and taking the fight to us. Whole cities turned into fortresses in a matter of weeks. Every man, woman, and child was armed if they could hold a gun, and worked in a factory if they could hold a hammer. We fought in those cities. And the grind of war reduced them all to dust. Billions, on both sides, died in those cities that were pulverized and scorched. Strangely, morale was always high in the civilian militias. And they never failed to take advantage of a weakness. Those bastards were insidious. We fought street by street, house by house, room by room, inch by bloody inch. For those planets. I watched good soldiers die so that we could move into the next room. Needless to say, the human military was nearly godlike. My first fight against human regulars came about 26 years after the war started. And after I had served 7 years on a now desolate rock halfway between here and hell. It had been a nice place. Home to 4 billion humans. Half the continent was dense city. The rest was untamed jungle. We fought for years in the middle of nowhere. Where the combat spread. The foliage was quickly torn apart and incinerated. There is literally no life on that planet anymore. And we never used orbital weapons. We didn't glass it or anything. We simply fought until every rock and brick had been ground into sand. The human military is sometimes mistaken for the wrath of a god. This is, however, a misleading statement. They are not all-powerful death machines. Humans are smaller, slower, and weaker than we are. On the ground. And toward the end of the war they made up for it in tactics and tech. But on an individual basis they were inferior. However, we seldom won a ground engagement that they started. Or that they were ready for. They were so dogged. So determined. That they pounded away at our lines until they broke. But even then. I'll never forget the first time I saw one of the humans' orbital shock troopers. Those men were the most competent that the human military can field. And I came to respect them. Now, you may be wondering how and why a human saved my life. So here it is. In a battle on a rock not far from here, just a few light years towards Seoul. I was tasked with holding a city block. It was right on the front lines. And I knew we were going to be attacked. Sure enough. Less than a week went by before the first human assault. This was about 12 years before the war ended. And we were all weary of fighting. The humans stormed out perimeter and we lost control of several key buildings in short order. I can't actually confirm that we inflicted a single casualty. That night I led a strike team into one building to retake it. We stormed in and were strangely unopposed for a few rooms. I broke off to clear a room. And when I entered I saw an orbital shock trooper. I raised my weapon to shoot him. But he was too close. Too fast. And was faring for me. He ripped my weapon from me and I punched him straight in the face. His visor cracked and he fell backward. We engaged in hand to hand. And it ended with me punching him until his visor shattered and cut his face badly. At that moment I got up to retrieve my weapon. Just then a chunk of the ceiling fell down and pinned the human to the ground. As I watched him under the massive slab of rock, I saw him grab something from his side. I didn't recognize it until it was too late. He fired the breaching shotgun. A plasma-based projectile weapon made to blast through heavy metal doors, twice. Both my legs were removed. And I was laying next to him. I watched him as he braced himself. Screamed louder than I thought possible for a human, and he then lifted the slab of rock off of himself. He stood and collected himself before he started to leave. I called out to him. And I asked him why he had not given up in the face of certain death. And that man looked me in the eye and said, "Because I'm not ready to die." And as I lie there, I realized that I too was not ready to die. That simple thought had not occurred to me in all my years as a soldier. And it inspired me. I used my arms to drag myself through the building until I found a comrade to carry me back to a medical station. So, if you have paid attention, you will notice that I never once called a human a soldier. Because none of them are. The humans are neither warriors nor soldiers. Humans are survivors. And that is why we lost. We tried to wipe out the one species that was determined that it would never die. And that motivation makes them giants. In our cradle we created gods and claimed that they had made our bodies in their image. And to this day I am convinced that those same gods made humans' minds in their image. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe.